I'm an alpha, a lethal one, a former assassin who made the colossal mistake of sleeping with a prime alpha target, birthing his child, and then running for the hills. 3 years later, that same prime alpha has cornered me, blocking my escape route with a look that says he's going to tear my throat out if I take one more step. He wants me to come back. He says it's to see the kid. But looking at the dark, predatory hunger in his eyes, I have a feeling we're going to be discussing the structural integrity of my reproductive cavity more than parenting strategies. I'm Jeremy. 3 years ago, I spent one night with a drugged Douglas Sterling. 2 weeks later, I realized my biology had betrayed me. I was pregnant. Me. An alpha. It was a cosmic joke. How the hell was a drifter with blood on his hands supposed to be a dad? The day the baby was born, I did the only thing I could think of. I left the bundle on the steps of the Sterling estate, ignored the infant's lung-shredding cries, and walked away. 3 years. My old organization was dismantled. I fell from being a top-tier hitman to a meat shield in an underground boxing ring. And tonight, Douglas Sterling is in the VIP box. He didn't recognize me. He was just there for the violence. But in his arms, staring unblinkingly at the blood on the canvas, was a toddler. I threw a jab, ducked a hook, and glared up at the glass booth. Who brings a kid to a place like this? I muttered, spitting blood onto the mat. Hey, focus, my opponent yelled, swinging a heavy right. I ducked, weaving under the blow. I am focused, I grunted, driving my fist into his ribs. I'm focused on the fact that the guy in the VIP box has brain damage. A 2-year-old? Here, I landed the knockout blow. The crowd roared. But I felt a cold prickle on the back of my neck. I looked up. Douglas was staring right at me. His eyes were black pits. For a second, I thought he knew. But then he looked away, bored. I grabbed my towel and headed for the showers. I needed to wash the scent of violence off me. I stripped, turning the water to scalding. I was scrubbing the adrenaline from my skin when I heard it. Heavy, deliberate footsteps. They didn't stop at the locker room door. They came right into the wet, tiled echo of the shower block. I froze. The footsteps stopped just outside my stall. No knock. Just a presence. A heavy, dominating pheromone scent. Crushed black currant and ice. You gonna stand there all night? I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. Or are you gonna hand me a bar of soap? I turned off the water, wrapped a towel around my waist, and stepped out. Douglas was leaning against the doorframe, looking immaculate in a 3-piece suit that cost more than my life. He looked at me, his gaze traveling slowly from my wet hair to my bare feet. Have we met? Douglas asked. His voice was deep, a baritone that vibrated in my chest. My blood turned to slush. I forced a grin, leaning casually against the sink. Mr. Sterling, you're the king of the city. I'm a punching bag. Unless you frequent the dive bars on Fifth, I don't think our paths have crossed. He didn't speak. He just stepped closer. The air grew heavy. He leaned in, his nose hovering inches from the gland on the back of my neck. I flinched, my hand flying up to cover it. Personal space, pal, I snapped, backing up. What's your deal? Douglas straightened, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. Your scent, he murmured. It's familiar. I laughed, a harsh, barking sound. Yeah? It's called generic chamomile. You can smell it on every third guy in the subway. My parents were assassins, not perfumers. They gave me boring genes. Is that so? Douglas tilted his head. Just common chamomile. Boring as dirt, I insisted. Right? He said, turning on his heel. I must have been mistaken. See you around, fighter. He walked out. I slumped against the cold tiles, clutching my chest. See me around? Not if I see you first, you creep. I quit the boxing gig that night. Packed my single bag. I was ready to bolt. But luck is a fickle mistress. 2 days later, I was filling in for a friend at a high-end bar, just trying to make quick cash for a bus ticket. An Omega went into heat in the VIP lounge. Chaos ensued. I helped wrestle a feral alpha off him, got the Omega to safety, and injected the aggressor with a sedative. By the time I was done, I was sweating, my own alpha pheromones spiking from the stress. I ducked into the staff bathroom to calm down. I didn't have a suppressor collar, too expensive. I just sat on the closed toilet lid, letting my chamomile scent flood the small room, trying to breathe. Knock. Knock. Come out. A voice commanded from the other side. My stomach dropped. I knew that voice. Occupied, I yelled, pitching my voice lower. Plumbing issue. Go to the lobby, I said. The voice dropped an octave, dripping with alpha command. Come. Out. I looked at the window. Painted shut. I looked at the door. I grabbed the handle. I was an assassin. I could kill him. I could snap his neck before he realized who I was. But he was the father of the kid. Damn it, I whispered. I pulled a bandana from my pocket, tied it around my face, checked my reflection in the phone screen, unrecognizable, and opened the door. Douglas stood there, arms crossed. The hallway was thick with his scent. It slammed into me, suppressing my chamomile instantly. It was dominating, terrifying, and familiar. Why did you leave the boxing gym so suddenly? He asked, casual as a Sunday morning. I hunched my shoulders, affecting a rasp. Sir? I don't know what you mean. He stepped forward, reaching for my face. I blocked his hand with a forearm parry, pure muscle memory. Don't touch me, I growled. I've got a rash. Highly contagious. Douglas chuckled, withdrawing his hand. Good reflexes. Professional block. I watch a lot of kung fu movies, I lied. Funny, Douglas murmured, stepping into my personal space. I experienced that exact block 3 years ago. In a hotel room. The man who used it didn't win that fight, either. I froze. He knew. He reached out, lightning fast, and ripped the bandana off my face. Gotcha, Douglas whispered. He held up the cheap fabric. Jeremy, you have a terrible memory. You used this same bandana to bind my arm that night. I stared at him, panic exploding in my chest. I turned to run. Douglas was faster. He slammed me against the bathroom door, his hand clamping onto the back of my neck, pinning me. Let go, I shouted, struggling. I'll scream. I'll claim harassment. Scream all you want, Douglas said calmly, holding me in place like I was a kitten. 3 years ago you couldn't beat me. You think boxing in a basement changed the math. What do you want? I snarled, giving up the struggle. You didn't look for me for 3 years. If you wanted me dead, you would have sent a hit squad. Why now? Douglas loosened his grip, but didn't let go. Lucas has been asking for his mother. You're coming home with me to calm him down. I blinked. His mother? I'm a dude, Douglas. And I'm an alpha. Tell the kid to get over it. Hire an actor. He's not stupid, Douglas said cold. He's 2. But he's my son. He knows. I'm not going, I said. I don't do domestic. Do you have any feelings for him at all? Douglas asked, his voice dropping. He is your flesh and blood. I looked him in the eye. Honest answer? No. Feelings are built on time and interaction. I haven't seen the kid since he was a prune. My parents sold me when I was 13. I learned early that blood is just biology. It's not a binding contract. It keeps you alive to be cold. Douglas stared at me. His eyes narrowed. He didn't say a word. He just unbuckled his belt, slid it off, and before I could react, he lashed my wrists together. Hey, what the hell? I shouted. He threw me over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes. You are psychotic, I yelled, pounding on his back. This is kidnapping. Put me down. The kid is 2. He won't know the difference between me and a golden retriever if you put a wig on it. Douglas ignored me, marching through the bar, out the back exit, and tossing me into the back of a black SUV. The drive was silent. I fumed in the back seat. When we arrived at the Sterling estate, he dragged me inside and dumped me on a leather sofa that cost more than my entire boxing career. Stay, he commanded. Woof, I muttered sarcastically. I heard the pat-pat-pat of small feet. A moment later, a small, round boy with serious eyes skidded into the room. He stopped, staring at me. He walked up, pulled the bandana, which Douglas had shoved back in my mouth, out, and studied my face. It's him, the kid said. I raised an eyebrow. How do you know? I look like a generic thug. Lucas pursed his lips. You look like the kind of irresponsible parent who would leave a baby on a porch. You have shifty eyes. I choked. From the doorway, Douglas let out a low laugh. Excuse me. I sputtered. I do not have shifty eyes. I have survival instincts. And you? I poked his chubby cheek. You're awfully articulate for a toddler. Shouldn't you be drooling? I'm advanced, Lucas said flatly. Why didn't you want me? Were you too poor? I looked at Douglas. Did you script this? He's roasting me. This is a roast. I looked back at the kid. Yes, I was poor. Still am. Babies are expensive. Diapers are a scam. Lucas nodded solemnly. I understand. Fiscal responsibility is important. Okay, stop, I said, rubbing my temples. Douglas said you were crying for a mom. You don't look like you're crying. You look like you're about to audit my taxes. Lucas looked at his father, then back at me. He shook his head. I wasn't crying. Father lied. I spun around to glare at Douglas. He didn't look embarrassed. He looked smug. You manipulated me, I accused. Using a child as bait. Classy. It worked, Douglas said, pouring himself a drink. And you're here. Lucas, go upstairs. I need to talk to Jeremy. Don't make a mess, Lucas warned us, then turned and marched upstairs. That kid is terrifying, I whispered. You created a monster. He takes after you, Douglas said, handing me a glass of water. Sit down, Jeremy. We need to talk about the real reason you're here. I took the water, eyeing him suspiciously. Lay it on me. You want me to assassinate a rival? I charged double for ex-lovers. Douglas sat across from me, his face serious. He slid a medical file across the table. Lucas is sick, he said. The humor evaporated. I picked up the file. What kind of sick? His pheromone gland is underdeveloped, Douglas explained. Because he was gestated in an alpha. In you. His body didn't absorb the necessary nutrients. The doctors say his gland is atrophying. If we don't fix it, he'll be in pain for the rest of his life. Immunocompromised. Weak. I scanned the papers. Words like congenital deficiency and alpha gestation syndrome jumped out. I felt a twinge of guilt. Just a twinge. Okay, I said quietly. So what's the fix? Surgery. Stem cells, Douglas said. Specifically, from the umbilical cord blood of a biological sibling. A full sibling. I looked up. You want another one. The doctors say it's the only way to generate the specific enzyme he needs, Douglas said, watching me closely. I didn't tell you immediately because I wasn't sure you'd agree. I wasn't sure if I'd have to chain you to the bed. I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. You basically did chain me. I sighed, tossing the file onto the table. Look, I'm not a monster. I abandoned the kid because I couldn't raise him, not because I wanted him to suffer. If I broke him, I guess I have to fix him. Douglas leaned forward. So you agree? To get knocked up again? I asked bluntly. Yeah, sure. But let's be clear on the mechanics here. Alpha fertility is garbage. You know that, right? I know, Douglas said. The doctor said IVF is difficult with alphas because the uterine lining is usually atrophied. Natural conception is recommended. High frequency. High frequency, I repeated. You mean we have to screw like rabbits until it sticks? Essentially, Douglas said, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. Fine, I said. But I have conditions. If I'm pregnant, I can't fight. I can't work. I need compensation. A stud fee, if you will. Douglas nodded. Name your price. I'll have the accountant set up a monthly transfer. Done, I said. I stood up, feeling awkward. So, do we start now? Or do I get dinner first? I prefer to be wined and dined before I get used as a medical device. Douglas stood up too. He moved closer, his scent wrapping around me again. Go shower. The guest room is prepped. I'll come to you. I felt my face heat up. Right. Okay. Just take it easy, all right? The first time, you were drugged. You were a chaotic mess. I walked funny for a week. I'm an alpha. I'm tough, but I'm not made of steel down there. Douglas's eyes darkened. He reached out, his thumb brushing my lower lip. I'm not drugged this time, Jeremy. I can be patient. I won't hurt you. I swatted his hand away, trying to keep my cool. Yeah. Save the romance for the Hallmark Channel. Just get the job done. I went to the room. It was filled with boxes of supplies. Lubricants. Vitamins. Hormones. Jesus, I muttered, picking up a bottle. Is he planning to impregnate me, or preserve me in a jar? I showered, scrubbing myself raw. When I came out, Douglas was sitting on the bed. He had taken off his jacket and rolled up his sleeves. He looked predatory. Ready? He asked. As I'll ever be, I said, dropping the towel and climbing into bed. Let's get this over with. Think of England. Douglas climbed over me. He was heavy, warm, and smelled like a storm. He buried his face in my neck, inhaling deeply. You're shaking, he whispered against my skin. I'm cold, I lied. You're scared, he corrected. I'm an assassin, I snapped. I don't get scared. I get tactical. Then tactically relax, Douglas growled, his hand sliding down my flank. Or this is going to hurt. It didn't hurt. Not really. It was intense. Douglas wasn't the feral animal he had been 3 years ago. He was methodical, deliberate. He touched me like he owned me, mapping every inch of skin. But the biological reality of two alphas trying to mate was difficult. It was a battle for dominance, even when we were trying to be intimate. Stop fighting me, Douglas gritted out, pinning my wrists. I can't help it. I gasped. It's instinct. You're encroaching on my territory. I am inside your territory, he growled. Submit. Never, I panted. But my body betrayed me. The pleasure was overwhelming, a tidal wave that drowned out my alpha pride. For a week, it was relentless. Douglas was in a pre-rut state, induced by the doctor to maximize potency. I was just the vessel. 7 days of friction, sweat, and the overwhelming scent of black currant. When it was over, I felt like a wrung-out dishcloth. Week 1 done. I groaned, face down in the pillow. If I'm not pregnant, I'm suing your sperm for incompetence. Douglas chuckled, patting my back. We'll know in a few days. Rest. I need to go out. I mumbled. I need fresh air. I need to punch something that isn't your head. Go, Douglas said. But take the card I gave you. Buy something nice. You look homeless. I am homeless, I reminded him. I live in your guest room. I took the card. I went out. But not to shop. I went back to the underground. I needed to know if my old contacts were still alive. Specifically, a kid named Leo. He saved my life 3 years ago during the escape. He took a bullet for me. I'd been paying for his life support in a shady clinic with my fight money. I walked into the clinic. It was a hole in the wall. Dr. Lee, a weasel of a man, looked up. Jeremy, he smiled, showing yellow teeth. Back so soon. Payment due. I have money, I said, flashing the black card. I want to see Leo. Of course, Lee said. He's stable. Sleeping Beauty. I walked back to the room. Leo was there, pale and thin, hooked up to machines. I sat by his bed. Hey kid, I whispered. I'm working on a big score. Gonna get you to a real hospital soon. Dr. Lee hovered in the doorway. So? About the payment. And the extra donation. I frowned. Extra donation? I gave you 10 vials of pheromones last month. That covers 3 months of care. Demand is high, Lee shrugged. Your scent. The wild chamomile. It's popular in certain circles. Very soothing. Something felt off. Popular where? You said you use it for anxiety treatments. Sure, Lee shifted his eyes. Anxiety. Just then, the front door crashed open. I heard shouting. Then, the distinct, heavy footsteps of Douglas Sterling. I jumped up. Douglas? How did you find me? Douglas stormed into the room, followed by 4 massive bodyguards. He looked furious. He pointed a finger at Dr. Lee. Seize him, Douglas ordered. The bodyguards grabbed the doctor. What is going on? I demanded, stepping between them. Douglas, you can't just raid my doctor. Doctor? Douglas laughed, a cold, sharp sound. This man is a pimp, Jeremy. And you're the product. What? Douglas shoved past me and kicked open a locked door at the back of the clinic. Look. I walked over. The room was filled with boxes. And on the tables, dolls. Silicone dolls. High quality. And they all had my face. I picked one up. It smelled like me. Exactly like me. He's been extracting your pheromones, Douglas said, his voice trembling with rage. And injecting them into these things. Selling them on the black market as the assassin's comfort. Do you know how many sick bastards have bought these? I stared at the doll. I felt sick. I thought he was making medicine. He was making sex toys, Douglas snarled. He turned to Dr. Lee. Burn it all. And break his fingers. 1 for every vial he stole. Wait, I said. I looked at Leo. Get the kid out first. Please. He saved my life. Douglas looked at Leo, then at me. His expression softened, just a fraction. Get the ambulance, he barked at his men. Move the boy to St. Jude's private wing. Put it on my tab. He grabbed my hand. We're leaving. Now. We sat in the car as the clinic burned behind us. I was shaking. Not from cold. From violation. I didn't know, I whispered. I know, Douglas said. He squeezed my hand. I tracked your spending. I saw the transfers to this place. I investigated. When I saw the catalog, he gripped the steering wheel so hard the leather creaked. I wanted to kill everyone who touched those things. Why? I asked. Why do you care? I'm just an incubator to you. Douglas turned to me. Is that what you think? That's what the contract says, I muttered. He didn't answer. He just drove us home. 2 weeks later, the test came back. Negative. I sat on the bathroom floor, staring at the stick. Not pregnant. Douglas stood in the doorway. He looked disappointed, but also determined. Round 2, he said. My hips hurt, I complained. We'll try a different angle, he said. You're insatiable. I'm motivated. Round 2 was different. The tension from the clinic incident had shifted something. Douglas was more protective. He would growl if the gardener looked at me too long. He started bringing me gifts. Not money. Weird things. A high-tech dagger. A bulletproof vest tailored to my size. Romance for assassins, I joked, strapping on the vest. What's next? A silencer with a bow on it. If you want it, Douglas said seriously. Then, the rut hit. A real one. It wasn't induced this time. Douglas woke up in the middle of the night, his skin burning, his scent thick enough to choke a horse. He came into my room, eyes glowing red. Jeremy, he groaned. I sat up. Oh boy. This is the real deal. Run, he rasped. I can't control it. If I run, we don't get a baby, I said. And Lucas stays sick. I stood up. I walked over to him. I put my hands on his burning chest. Come on, big guy. Let's make a miracle. He lost it. The next 3 days were a blur. It wasn't gentle. It was primal. It was teeth and claws and claiming. He bit my gland so hard I thought he'd severed the nerve. He nodded me repeatedly, pouring everything he had into me. When the fog lifted, we were tangled together in a wreck of a bed. You okay? Douglas asked, his voice hoarse. I think my soul left my body, I whispered. But yeah, I'm alive. 3 weeks later. I was eating a pickle. Then I dipped the pickle in peanut butter. Then I cried because a commercial for insurance featured a sad dog. You're pregnant, Lucas said, walking into the kitchen. I am not, I sobbed, eating the pickle. I'm just emotional. You're pregnant, Douglas said, walking in behind him. He held up a medical report. Hormone levels are through the roof. We did it. I dropped the pickle. We did it. We did it, Douglas grinned. It was a real smile. Dazzling. The next 9 months were weird. I got big. Fast. Lucas talked to my stomach, explaining the stock market to his unborn brother. Douglas became a hovering nightmare. Don't lift that. Don't walk too fast. Don't look at the stairs, they're dangerous. I killed 3 men with a pencil once. I reminded him, waddling to the couch. I can handle stairs. Not with my son inside you, Douglas said. Our son, I corrected. And his name is going to be Chaos. Or Destruction. His name will be Julian, Douglas said. Boring, I said. When the labor started, it was fast. Alphas don't dilate well. It was agony. I screamed words that made the nurses blush. Douglas held my hand, letting me crush his fingers. Breathe, Jeremy, he ordered. You breathe. I yelled. You did this to me. I'm going to punch you in the throat when I can move my legs. Focus on the anger, Douglas encouraged. Use it. And then he was there. Julian. Screaming, red, and angry. They took the cord blood immediately. They ran it to Lucas's room. I lay there, exhausted, holding the baby. Douglas looked at us. He looked soft. He's perfect, Douglas whispered. He looks like a wrinkled potato, I said lovingly. A month later, Lucas was recovering. His color was back. The treatment worked. I packed my bag. The contract was fulfilled. I had the money. I had the health of both kids secured. It was time to go. I walked downstairs. Douglas was in the living room, holding Julian. Lucas was reading a book beside him. It was a domestic scene that made my chest ache. Where are you going? Douglas asked, not looking up. Job's done, I said, trying to sound casual. Contract complete. Lucas is cured. Julian is healthy. I'm heading out. Douglas looked up. He handed the baby to the nanny and stood up. He walked over to me, blocking the door. You think you're leaving? He asked. That was the deal, I said. Stud fee. Medical intervention. Goodbye. Douglas laughed. It was a dark, low sound. He stepped closer, crowding me against the door. Jeremy, he murmured, his hand sliding up my neck to cup the back of my head. You misunderstood the contract. I read the fine print. I stammered. There was no retention clause. There is now, Douglas said. You gave me 2 sons. You think I'm going to let the mother of my children wander around the underworld, fighting for scraps? You think I'm going to let you sleep in cheap motels? I'm an alpha, I said weakly. I belong in the wild. You belong to me, Douglas corrected. His eyes flashed. You wanted money? I gave you a black card with no limit. You wanted safety? I burned down the clinic that hurt you. You wanted a family? Look around. He gestured to the room. To Lucas, who was watching us over his book. To the baby cooing in the nanny's arms. You're trapped, Jeremy, Douglas whispered, leaning his forehead against mine. I laid the trap 3 years ago. I just waited for you to walk back into it. You're not going anywhere. I looked at him. I looked at the door. I could fight him. I could try. But his scent was all over me. My scent was all over him. This is kidnapping, I whispered, but I didn't push him away. This is marriage, Douglas said. Or as close as we're going to get. He kissed me. Hard. Possessive. It tasted like black currant and victory. I sighed, dropping my bag. Fine. But I'm not doing the laundry. Douglas smiled against my lips. Deal. I looked over at Lucas. Told you he wouldn't leave, Lucas said to the baby. He has no survival skills outside captivity. Shut up, kid, I said affectionately. I was trapped. I was owned. And God help me. I was home.